On Maui, we say Maui no ko'oi, which means there's no place like Maui. But can people actually live here? Many say no. In the past few years, rent on Maui has been skyrocketing, and many people are leaving their apartments and just choosing to become homeless. What's going on with the price of rent on Maui? We'll find out today on the Maui Liberty Network.
They're cutting up the Constitution. Well, you know. It's USA.
Is rent going up on Maui?
Yeah, it's really going up. I have lived here for almost 20 years, and when I first moved here, it was $425 for a little, like 500 square foot studio. Now I think that same studio is maybe $1,200. I think might have some experience with that.
Well, rent's definitely going up, but is that just inflation, or do you think there's something else at work?
I don't know. I think
sure?
that the cost, I want to blame it on my evil, greedy landlady, but I do know that her costs have also gone up.
Prices are rising all over Maui when it comes to rent, and a lot of people say it's because of those greedy landlords. Well, we've got a greedy landlord here. Her name is Marty Foyt. Is that the reason that rent's raising, do you think?
I don't
think
so. A lot of landlords are just working people. They, for some reason, got to be a landlord. And I always thought years ago landlords were people that, gosh, you own a rental property? Wow, you must have money. No, you just got into a circumstance where you got to have a home that you could then move out of and rent.
So landlords are people too,
Yes,
and the reason rents are going up, not just because of the landlords, but the system.
The system.
Right, the system. We talked to a bunch of people who really understand the system. Peter Martin is a developer at West Maui Land, and Dave DeLeon is the Government Affairs Director for the Realtors Association of Maui. I was looking on the internet for a place to rent recently, and I was on Craigslist, and I was looking, and there it just seems like instead of listings for places to rent, there's complaints about how high prices are. Prices are so high, greedy landlords, and it just seems like this is a big problem on Maui.
It's a huge problem.
Is this all just inflation, or are prices going up faster than normal? What's going on in prices?
We're in an up cycle. Housing happens in a cycle. It goes up and it goes down. It goes around and around, and then continuing motion like this. And we're on an upswing. And until it starts swinging back down again, the prices aren't going to go down much at all.
Of course, part of the problem is it's a supply and demand issue, and whenever you have an especially nice place, it'll be rationed by price because it's just a function of how many people want to live here.
Supply is low,
right?
Demand's high.
Would it be easy to increase supply here? Yes, except for because of government, it's not. But if it wasn't for government, getting in the way.
How does government get in the way?
Well, a simple example is just an example, and I think that's the best way. In Maui and in many other places, there's tremendous amount of regulation.
I mean, you go to try to build or do anything with housing, you run up against government regulations and barriers and requirements and who's going to build it and how it's going to be built and all that sort of thing. A lot of mine matters of safety, but most all of this is intended to protect the real estate market. They limit the land use here to 5% of the land for all commercial and residential use. And that means, for conservation and agriculture, they do fine in the state in terms of the amount of land that they have. But for living, for people who need homes, housing prices are extraordinarily expensive, among the highest in the country. And they say it's a shortage of land. No, it's a shortage of zoned land, where they're allowed to use it for housing.
We've gotten it down now, so there's like 6 layers of land use control in the state.
In other words, a lot.
6 layers, so you got to get through the State Land Use Commission, you got to get through the Maui Island Plan, you got to get through the Community Plan, you got to get through zoning, you got to get through SMA. If you're in the historic district, you got to get through the historic district. These are all different individual layers with individual requirements, And if you start with agricultural land, raw agricultural land, you're talking 10 years just to get through that process.
So you're saying it takes 10. It can take 10 years for someone who wants to build something on their land, if it's a raw piece of agricultural land, to build something.
Yeah, that raw land might be worth $20,000 to start. After all the entitlements are in place, it's $1 million.
We've owned the Olawala property now for 16 years, and we haven't been able to change the zoning at all. We love this property. We've been able to do a small amount of development here under the existing zoning, but our one great attempt at affordable housing was the Puanoa affordable housing, and it was very painful. Over $1 million, I believe, we lost, and it was turned down. It was, I thought, a great project.
This is affordable housing for people.
Yes, it was. I don't know if you were here. It was right across from Puamana condominiums. It was around 250 units.
But part of the struggle to get that approved was all the regulations, which made it really difficult.
Right. That one became a real battle.
A real battle. All because of all the laws and regulations. Let's take another look at the 6 layers of government bureaucracy in land. Can you talk a little bit about those 6 layers that of regulations and policies that someone would have to look at?
So the first one is a state entity that has this. I think we're the only state in the country that has this. I think maybe Oregon has something like it, where there's a state zoning over the whole state.
The whole state is zoned
by the state.
And that's rare for
So there's
a state.
like 4 categories. There's urban, there's rural, agriculture, and conservation.
Do you know what the percentages are? I know we're talking about percentages. That's kind of boring.
Most of our urban's developed, and the urban is about 5%.
About 5% is urban
Of the whole state.
Of the whole state. And then, so we've got a whole state zone, and
Right.
then
And
below
okay,
that,
so that's controlled by the State Land Use Commission. It's a different entity. It's an appointed body that's appointed by the governor.
Okay, I'm starting to get lost, but I'll try to keep track. Okay,
Okay, so
LUC, the State Land Use Commission.
Right. Then there's a great debate about whether it's necessary at this point. But that was a creature of that whole thing about saving agriculture. That was the purpose of it.
Okay, it kind of started from the sugar.
Yeah, it came out of the
from big
sugar politics, right.
Right, okay. And below the LUC?
Then it's the counties. And then, so at the county level, you have, Maui County, you have the island plans. So like Maui has its own plan, just for the whole island now. Then underneath that, on Maui, there's 6 community plans. Lanai has its own plan. Molokai has its own plan.
And each plan adds more and more
layers,
regulations and rules.
And limitations of what you can do. And then below that is your zoning. So
more zoning.
Yeah, zoning. The regular zoning.
Regular zoning.
Zoning.
Apartment zoned or
right. Apartment.
Business zoned.
Where you can build your business, where you can, where your farms are.
I mean, for me, when I think of land, you own your land, you own your property, you can do what you want on your own property. And if I try to do something, I can't because everyone else has. It's almost as if everyone else owns my property.
In effect, and it does in our society. Yes.
We have so many layers of government regulation on land use. Why? If it's your property, you use it however you feel it's best to use it. And much as your neighbor might object to what you have on your land and your property, in my view, to be a good neighbor, you're going to take that into account, but it's still your property.
If the government says that you can do this on your property and you can't do this, and it has a laundry list of so many things about what you can do and what you can't do, then do you really own the property?
No. No, in a word, no. If they've got all that control, and not only that, they've got already a bunch of laws and rules and regulations. What's to stop them from adding some after you own the property and essentially neutering any value? Well, I'm not sure that you can have individual liberty without property, without individual property rights. Individuals owning property and making the property more valuable and more useful is the basis for productivity in society.
We always talk about private property as being something that's sacrosanct. Your home is your castle. But in fact, no one ever owns anything in this state. It is controlled from the beginning, from the ground up, by the government telling you what you can produce, how you can produce, for whom you can produce it, and if you don't pay the taxes on it, they'll take it away from you.
If you're just tuning in, it's the Maui Liberty Network. I'm Joe Kent, and we're talking today about land. On Maui, more than 45% of the land is zoned for agriculture. And if you own agricultural land, you're forced to farm. This creates another problem: fake farms. Someone who has a property and they have a house on their property and they have to farm. They have to pretend to farm, or actually farm. I shouldn't say pretend. But are there fake farms on Maui?
Are there fake farms on Maui? I used to say it's a Polish, but he's not Polish anymore. The majority of the ag properties, the small lot agricultural properties on Maui, do not reach the requirement for that. They don't even manage to fake it.
They don't do any farming.
They don't do any farming, yeah. The majority of them don't. Not being farmed.
And is there a farming police, someone who goes around and sees this person isn't farming, you're under arrest? Or?
When you want a building permit for something, yes. So when you go to the county and say, I want to do X on my property, I want to have a bed and breakfast, I want to add on some, I want to build a cottage, they'll say, where's your farm?
And what does that do? Fake,
so
what's the big
deal? So that forces the fake farm.
Aha.
So then you have to create this illusion that you're farming.
Are there fake farms on Maui?
I love this fake farm idea. Well, this has been a classic argument forever, and it's just funny. And my argument has always been, forget these rules about farming. All we are trying to provide is the opportunity to farm. Quit making people, quit trying. It's just stupid. All this stuff is just
somebody wants to farm, they can.
And you're
they don't want
hiring
to.
another 20 planners and paying them a very decent pay, not probably at first, after a while, and then their retirement benefits. I mean, it's an expensive game to regulate this stuff.
The cost of farming increases the price?
Cost
so in other
of
words,
farming.
it costs money to farm a property, right? So if you're trying to conform to the rules and regulations about farming, that's a big cost.
So those with the resources who want to play that game actually hire their farmer to come and farm for them, yes. And usually on bigger properties. You see like in Laniapoco, not Laniapoco per se, but that's our part of West Maui and some other places where the person living there will have somebody else do the farming.
So, okay, so we've got fake farms and we also have disingenuous farms. In other words, farms that they don't really care about farming.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say that so much as the people who bought these properties weren't farmers in the first place. Farmers couldn't afford these properties. So the rules kind of push them into a direction that they have to go if they want to do X, Y, or Z with their property.
And the Realtors Association of Maui is just trying to get rid of the farming requirement.
We're trying to strip away that mask of the kind of the nonsense of it.
If you're just tuning in, it's the Maui Liberty Network. I'm Joe Kent, and we're talking today about land. Have you ever wondered why there are no mobile homes on Maui or in Hawaii? Isn't that odd? I mean, mobile homes are pretty cheap, but I've never seen anyone living out of a mobile home before here. On the other hand, there's a lot of food trucks and businesses being run out of trailers. Why are there no mobile homes in Hawaii? Something I've always wondered, why is there no mobile homes on Maui?
That's been a long time policy.
It's a policy.
Yeah.
There's a law?
Yeah.
The cheapest form of low cost and good housing is mobile homes. That's outlawed on the islands here. to my knowledge, on the Maui too, but it certainly is on Oahu. I mean, a lot of very low-cost homes that are available on the mainland. You can get homes for a couple $1,000s for double wide.
So you're saying that mobile homes are illegal here?
Yeah.
In Hawaii, we've got a law that says no mobile homes in Hawaii. And the rationale is that they look ugly and they not in my backyard.
Trailer park trash.
Trailer park trash, right. But what's your opinion about mobile homes?
It's so amusing because there's exceptions to that rule with regard to mobile homes. They let contractors have mobile offices, and they can move those offices in. They use trailers. As a matter of fact, I think they might use trailers that in Alabama would be used for housing, and they use it for offices. So that's a protection mechanism put in for developers, for people that build. So they don't want the competition of these trailers.
The power of the lobbyists, the union and construction industry are not friendly towards competition like this, because basically what you're saying is that the mobile home or a prefab home is something that can be constructed on the mainland in these factory facilities that can be super cheap. Then just put on a barge and come over here, anchored down so it's as secure as any kind of house could possibly be, and very, very cheap. Very cheap.
The trailers are unbelievably inexpensive. They're the big manufacturing place for trailers, or at least it used to be, was Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and some of the finest. I mean, you can really buy a high-class home for $50,000, and so
a trailer home
that's very,
they look
very
really nice
well.
today.
They're very well appointed and so forth. But we could get some basic ones in Hawaii, and admittedly, we would have maybe a not beautiful-looking neighborhood, although I've seen some beautiful-looking neighborhoods in Alabama that are all trailers.
On the mainland, for $3,000, you can get a used mobile home that's a nice, spacious, long trailer home with a kitchen and a bedroom and a nice TV room and so on. And for $15,000, you can get a nice, new, double-wide mobile home. And there are luxury models that go up from there, maybe to $30,000. But keep in mind that we're paying a median price of a house here is anywhere from $650,000 to $700,000. And half of the price of that house is probably the land, and the other half of the price of the house is the construction of it, because we're paying very expensive wages, very expensive materials. Keep in mind the Matson monopoly law is the one that otherwise known as the Jones Act, makes it very expensive to bring materials here for the construction of anything.
Where's the best way that we can use our money? Buy trailers at $5,000 a piece and get people in real shelter, or sleeping on the sidewalk.
Another problem in Hawaii is homelessness. Here in Lahaina, many people are leaving their expensive apartments and just choosing to live without a home. Are there any solutions to this problem? I live in Lahaina, and I see homeless people every day, and they're sleeping here and they're sleeping there, and then some homeless people get up and go to work, and now we've got working homeless. Is there anything that can be done about the homeless problem on Maui?
There's no easy answer. I mean, and you have a variety of homeless. You have the working homeless who are capable and able to take care of themselves, and they're just stuck in the situation for the time being. Then you got the schizophrenics and the alcoholics that are out there who aren't able to take care of themselves. And that's a change in our society. I mean, that's just a decision our society made maybe a generation ago.
Is a solution to homelessness getting rid of the regulations that increase the price so that more people can afford to live in a house.
For the working poor, yes. For the really working poor, we need more apartments. We need more rentals.
There's a lot of homeless. We're in on the west side. There's a lot of homeless all over Maui.
Yes.
Is that something that you're concerned about?
I am. I'm involved in that a little bit because I have a foundation called the Ho'omoana Foundation, which my wife and I, former wife, about 5 or 6 years ago, we donated a building I'd had in Colorado, which had a nice income stream, and we donated that to Ho'omoana Foundation to fund a camp I had proposed in Spreckelsville that was not exactly a homeless, it got called a homeless camp, but it was really a camp. It would have windsurfing people and people that you might consider needing a step up.
So you had vacationers, and if you wanted to have a tent and just reside there,
right,
you could.
For a while. Our goal was that the tourists staying there would pay enough money to subsidize to make the place work financially. And I funded it with this building that generates about $70,000 a year, and that was going to cover the difference. And we were going to build a manager's cottage there, like a 2-bedroom cottage, but it was very well laid out. We're actually thinking about, Ho'omoana is thinking about doing this, and this is going to be a fascinating hit the news, I hope, if anybody watches your station. I'm not sure. But if they do, it's going to be interesting because we're interested, Ho'omoana, doing this on the on the Kaula land. Not a very big camp, maybe starting with 10 to 20 campsites and never getting ridiculous, but it's kind of an experiment to find out if people have a place to transition that is a pleasant environment.
I want to talk a little bit about this idea of a homeless camp, right? I heard somebody's trying to build a homeless camp. At least homeless folks can have a tent, and maybe it'd be $100 a month or something like that. Is this a good idea or bad idea?
Who's going to manage it? Who's going to be responsible for the murders and the craziness and the collective craziness you get when you bring all those people together? I was responsible for making, when I worked in the mayor's office, I was responsible in a way for allowing some guys to camp out on the harbor break out in Kahului Harbor. And before we knew it, we had thousands of people out there. And it was a mess. And people were getting mugged, and the drugs were happening, and so you have to manage it. You can't just let them be by themselves.
What about the people who say you've got a camp for homeless people, and who's going to manage the camp, and how do you make sure that we don't have drugs and violence?
Violence is very important not to have. Drugs and alcohol, to me, is not the end of the world. Beating somebody up is the end of the world. Or not the end of the world, but we do that. So I don't believe our policies, and again, I have a board. I don't totally overrule the board, but we weren't planning on making it necessarily drug-free or we're making it violence-free. So if you have
people who manage the camp,
will, and that is extremely important to find the right type of manager. The guy that's basically tough love guy, and can read through all the BS stories you get.
And you folks have kicked people off who have been impolite neighbors.
Olawalo, yes, that happens. Believe it or not, it doesn't happen that often, but it does, yes.
It obviously has to
happen. No,
happen.
it happens for sure.
Okay.
Or if they're just too messy looking, or not them, but if they're just can't follow the basic hygienic rules that we need in a camp.
You've got a camp for homeless people with high standards, then, right? Or not high standards, but appropriate standards.
Yeah, and by the way, it's very important that the camp does not just have homeless because then it gets labeled that way. Nobody labels Camp Ola Wall as a homeless camp, and it's not. And this camp will be definitely more aimed at people that are in transition. You're not going to be able to stay there indefinitely. The goal is in our new camp, and it's kind of an experiment. We're hoping to work with people that somehow are transitioning, or they're just stuck, or they have mental health problems.
These are working people.
If you're just really want to be homeless, which makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. You know, I have a friend of mine, I won't mention his name, but he was a student of mine at Maui High. Great young man. He said it was the best time of his life. He got a camper after high school. He lived in the camper. He surfed at the boogie board at the bay, had a motorcycle, worked, and he camped. And he was homeless, but he didn't want a home. So we can't do, that's not.
You can't force him
I'm
into
not,
being a home.
I'm not aiming at him. So my point is, we want it so people have a safe place if they're down and out.
I mean, it strikes me as fascinating that here we have a developer who a lot of people say, oh, those developers don't care about the homeless. And yet here you're doing all this work, all these projects to try to help the situation. And what the thing that's getting in the way are the rules and regulations and the process.
Well, I have to say in Spreckelsville, a lot of people say I didn't handle it right, but that's what people say when they don't want something. They never say, oh, I don't want it, especially a homeless camp. They go, oh, you should have came and talked to me first.
So let's say you have a nonprofit that is going to start a campsite. Even to do that, you would still need the permits to do it and the...
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Right?
Yes.
It'd have to be zoned correctly. And
Guess what? As soon as you do that, guess who's going to show up? NIMBY.
not
Who's
in my
going to want that
backyard.
in their backyard?
They were petrified that this was going to ruin their neighborhood. Well,
Not in my backyard.
exactly, and that's what I actually liked about it. It was in my backyard. Nobody was going to be closer to this than me, and we tried to get it so we could we had 30 campsites at first, and it was quite a ways away. I tried to reduce it to 10. At the final meeting, I said, can we just have one campsite? And these were people I've known for a long time and good friends and very respectable people in the community. They're just afraid. And then then they threw a lawsuit, and I went, you know what? I've already spent, I think it was like $45,000 to get this. It was called a special use permit, and it was only for like a year. I mean, if it gets reviewed in a year, so that's a lot of money to spend and build a cottage, and 1 year we could have been out. So I thought that was a fairly good, baby step. But then we were getting sued by Isaac Hall, and I went, and my attorney, I threw in the towel.
Oh, wait. Speaking of homelessness, maybe the solution to all this is just affordable housing. I mean, government just needs to come in and regulate affordable housing, right? How about this? A solution to homelessness is affordable housing. So you create a 50% affordable housing rule on Maui, and
We have one.
And okay, so we have one. So how's that worked?
It blew up. It blew up terribly.
On Maui, we've got a 50% rule. And if a developer wants to build something, 50% of the land must go towards affordable housing, correct?
Yes.
And what does that do to the market?
If you've got to build a certain number of affordable houses and you're going to lose a fair amount of money on those, then the housing you build has to be very high end. The middle, you can't tack that $100,000 loss per house onto a $400,000 or $500,000 middle class house. It doesn't work.
So the only
So you
thing
end
that
up with
would
very high end homes.
right, the only thing that would pay for it are high-end homes are the only thing that could pay for an
Could only
affordable
justify
housing
it.
project.
Suppose you said to a shoemaker, well, Okay, you're going to make shoes, and what is the cost of your shoes? Well, it's $10. Well, okay, then you have to have a markup of $5 in order to make it profitable. Well, okay, so then you say, well, but half your shoes have to be at a $5 price, so that people who can't afford your $15 shoes could be able to afford them. Well, it means that you don't have $15 shoes, then you've got to have a $20 shoe in order to cover the cost of these $5 shoes that you've offered out there. Now, $20 means that fewer people can buy shoes, and you're offering a subsidy to people, and who gets to decide who gets the subsidy? More power to the politician, because he gets to decide who it is that gets into that category. He gets the gratitude and the pat on the back for handing these people other people's money. And what does the guy who's making shoes say? I'll go somewhere else.
So you've got property split in half. Half of it is not affordable housing, half of it is. And the non-affordable housing has to pay for the affordable housing.
Right.
And it doesn't.
Well, it doesn't
work
have to pay the whole
economically.
thing. They pay the subsidy that makes it affordable.
And if the math doesn't work, they decide not to build.
The math hasn't worked. That's why we don't see any housing development on Maui right now.
So the affordable housing has created the affordable housing requirement has created less housing.
Yes.
The affordable housing requirement has created less affordable housing.
Yes. Well, it created less housing.
Less housing, period.
Yes, it does create less affordable housing, because the minute you create housing in any category, you get a move effect. So people move out of their lower rent ones, and because they buy. There are people, Maui people especially, people in Maui that have lived here a long time, there's a fierce desire to own your own home.
That law has to be grounded in economics, so it makes sense. And we're proposing, our association is really pushing, and I think a lot of people agree at this point, that the national average for these kind of laws is 25% or lower. Let's get down to 25%.
Okay, so
and
moderation.
Yeah.
And
but there's a lot of other quirky stuff with that law, too. I mean, they were really ambitious. They're really trying to do the right thing and had no economic clue.
How about getting rid of it?
Then you'll have straight housing. Yeah, you can pass a law that have to get water up to a certain elevation, but laws don't make water go uphill. And so you can't overcome physics that way. And laws don't overcome economics either.
Cool. It feels kind of like we're flying up here. I mean, I've never seen this view before. This is spectacular. Bill Frampton is a developer on Maui who's working on developing Olowalu into a town. He chatted with me about the perception of developers and the environment. Look at all the sprawl that's happened in Maui, Kahului, the sprawl that's going on there, and Kihei. And who is to blame for the sprawl? Obviously, it must be developers like you. So can you comment on that? Are developers the result of all the sprawl that's going on?
That's a really good question, and something that has to be discussed before we talk about doing anything at Olowalu. If we are to follow the same old development patterns that we've seen for the last 40, 50, 60 years on this island, you should not support my project. Do not support us, because that would mean we would be building just simply housing, maybe a strip mall or two, and tremendous amount of hard surfaces, hardscape. We would expand outward and be in a very wasteful use of this land, and would be detrimental to the environment, to people, to culture, to community, to jobs, everything. We're saying don't do that, because there's another way to grow. And what you were referring to earlier is the suburban sprawl. Suburban sprawl, you might think, if you quickly take a look at it, would be the result of developers doing this kind of project that hurts the island.
Obviously, you see roads and houses all over. And
well, what's interesting is that is not necessarily their fault. They're forced to build this way. We are forced to build suburban sprawl based upon our zoning codes. Maui County has a zoning code that was imported wholesale from the mainland. It has developed across the country from in the late 1930s, Euclidean zoning they call it. It is absolutely dominated by the automobile. The reason is the type of zoning code that we have here on Maui strictly separates land uses into separate pods. You have houses over there, churches here, schools here, business here, public uses there. Very strictly regulated to be separate. Therefore, every time you need to do anything, get a cup of coffee, go see grandma, tutu, go to school, go to work, get food, get in your car and drive.
I see. So instead of everything kind of being bunched together, you always have to drive. You go to church, and then you go to the grocery stores, and so on. So and the more driving that you need, the more roads that we need, and so that's why we see all these roads.
That's correct. And what happens is this automobile-based zoning code was brought to Maui, not deliberately or intentionally hoping to do something, thinking, we could do this to Maui. It was just what was right at the time. We needed to control growth at some level. Growth was exploding. They brought in a code, again, that's dominated by the automobile. It doesn't take into consideration culture, resources, human beings, social interaction, knowing your neighbors. That doesn't take that into account. Instead, it's all about that automobile. And what we're saying is there's a better way to grow. And if you look around, what's absolutely unique about Maui compared to the rest of this country is Maui already has the model. We've already had a sustainable island. We had these, and we still have a number of traditional towns left on this island. Paia, Makawao, parts of Wailuku Town, Lahaina Town, Lanai City, Kaunakakai. We have communities that were compact, connected,
before
and
the zoning code.
Before, they were built a long time ago.
Right.
And if you think about the rest of the country, before World War II, most of the communities that we built are communities that we all value and cherish. They're places worth caring about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. It's the Maui Liberty Network. I'm Joe Kent, and we're here with Bill Frampton. Bill is of Frampton and Ward. He's a lifelong Maui resident, and he's a town developer for Oluwalu Town. Welcome, Bill.
Hey.
So I was thinking about this. We're in Oluwalu right now, and they're trying to, or I guess you folks are trying to think about building a town here. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We're thank you for having me and talking story with me, and I appreciate the opportunity. We're like you said, we're here in Oluwalu right now. You can tell by the surroundings, we're in a beautiful, beautiful location with tremendous natural resource value. Also sacred cultural and historical value. And Oluwalu has always been a place to live. Since pre-contact times, Oluwalu was its separate ahupua'a, a distinct community. And in Oluwalu, you could live, work, and play in Oluwalu.
So, and that's really surprising to me, because right now we think of Oluwalu as nobody lives there, and no one has ever lived there. But you're saying correct. It used to be a bigger community.
Yeah, and it's easy to get that feeling. You drive through the only one highway connecting West Maui to Central Maui, and as you drive through Oluwalu, which is about a 2-mile stretch, you don't see much. You see one classic, the Oluwalu General Store. You see there's Camp Oluwalu, which used to be Camp Pakusa. And on either far end of Oluwalu, spectacular access to coastal resources. But you don't picture it like a thriving community. Well, that's just only in recent time. It was pre-contact, like I was saying, there were up to 2,000 Hawaiians living here.
2,000 people in this area.
2,000 people in this ahupua'a, thriving, living in a sustainable model via the ahupua'a, which was a remarkable model that we believe we can learn from the past and how to use those same principles going forward. Then there was a plantation days all the way up until it started in the 1870s. The sugarcane plantation came in and started the Olowalu Sugar Company. In doing so, they created a community. The community you can see down below here, the plantation community was right around where those construction base yard is right now. That they stayed right in that area for the most part. Directly makai of us, you can see homes of Kapaiki. That was where we believe the larger settlement itself was, with Chiefess Kaloa residing over this area, whose descendants still live here in this valley. The Ka'ahui and the Rodriguez families still live here, along with other wonderful families. The Naho'i Kaika family still living here.
Your family has lived in Olowalu for a long time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, they've been there for generations. Originally, my family's from Ukamehame Valley, but whenever the sugar mills opened up and kind of changed the structure of economics in Hawaii, my family actually moved to Olowalu, and my father's father worked for the sugarcane companies, and they established a church there in the 1800s, which we've been using to this day.
And the church is still going on today.
It's still there, Olowalu Lanakila Hawaiian Church. The old ruins are no longer used, but we have a alternate building that we use that's right next to it now.
And we're in Olowalu, and yesterday they were talking about a project, Olowalu Town, to have a town come in here. Is that a good idea? Would it affect this area in a negative way?
I think it's a good thing because Olowalu really needs development. It's been a tiny village basically forever. It's remained largely unchanged since I was a child.
I think their comprehensive view on the development plan was a good plan. I think the density looks. I didn't hear nothing about the density, but it looks quite ambitious. But they taking into consideration cultural aspects was very, very good.
Respectful.
Was a respectful situation, and I just hope that they're able to keep the culture intact as it relates to this area, because this is a pretty significant area, and it deserves to be well planned.
I think what's great about those involved with this development is they're open to discussion. So what's really important is to bring in the experts, the people that do know what the reef needs to be preserved for sustainability, that know sustainable development. As long as all the people, all the experts dealing with the land side, the development side, the cultural side, the ocean side, if you have those experts, trusting one each other, talking at the table, then I think you have your best shot at, a development that will.
As long as people communicate.
Communication is key, and you got to have the right people at the table as well.
And they showed some pictures of the reef damaged out there. Is this a damaged reef?
Yeah, so Olowalu Reef is about 1,000 acres of reef. Goes all the way down to Ukamahame, and it's one of 2 reefs left in Maui that have more than 50% coral cover. It's an incredible resource. The top coral biologists in the state call this sort of Maui's mother reef. It's the reef.
It's one of the best.
It seeds all the other reefs all along West Maui, Molokai, Lanai. So this is has got an incredible manta ray population, some 500-year-old corals. It's an incredible resource. The inshore part of it, there is runoff. There are some storm outflows, so there is sediment that's covering part of the inshore. That if you get in the water in the shallows, it does look somewhat degraded in areas.
We're standing along the side of the Honopi-Ilani Highway within the Olowalu, near the southern portion, and right behind us is a drainage catch basin that has these 2 large concrete pipes that run under the highway and pop out on the other side, on the Makai side of the highway, such that this is here to capture giant amounts of rain. When the rain comes and we have storm water, it runs off of the highway, flows in through this concrete swale and lands here. It also comes from the Mauka side and comes down and collects here. That storm water flows into this pond, which then flows directly out into the ocean unchecked. That causes harm to the risk of the reef. That's a threat of, or a risk to the reef. What we need to do is we have better ways of capturing the stormwater runoff. And one of the causes of this, the reason this occurs now, is this highway, when it was built in the 50s, was raised. They raised this highway to keep it out of the ocean level, ironically, out of the flood level, so they could drive safely. In doing so, they created this large man-made berm. Water comes down the mountain, gets trapped behind this highway berm, floods the homes behind us, and then eventually would overflow onto that highway and create a dangerous situation. So the state had to come out and create outlets where the water could dump directly out into that ocean. Again, it's back to this idea of stormwater's bad, get rid of it as fast as you can. We can change that. We can change it so that stormwater becomes a good thing. It's a blessing. When it rains, we'll be pleased because we'll be capturing it, not letting it go straight out into the ocean, and spreading it out amongst this land to help keep it green.
So we had the state, through good intentions, has created a environmental problem here with the way that the water is handled. We've got a collection area, and it just shoots straight out into the ocean. And a private developer is trying to think about environmental solutions to that. I think that's amazing.
Accommodate both. The state, like you said, was well-intentioned to create a safe environment for humans. In doing so, we forgot about the environment. There's a way to accomplish both. Protect that environment and still build beautiful human habitat.
They're trying to be careful about the rainwater seeping into the reef, and which no one's being careful about right now. So do you think it would affect the reef?
I think it would have a positive impact. Right now, the rainwater is just washing directly into the reef. If they put in the grass, as Peter Martin proposed, I think that would actually help the reef.
So this stream right here would not disappear?
No. In fact, this stream right here, right now, it's flowing very nicely based on our recent rains. There are times when this is dry. One of our concerns is historically, though there was a diversion on this stream, and there still is a diversion that diverts a fair amount of water every day. That was needed to irrigate our cane system, the sugar cane. The sugar cane's gone.
I saw that. I walked up there one time and I saw the water, the river is bigger, and then half of it goes this way and half of it goes that way.
That's correct. If we do our system right, the water that's being diverted out of this stream, a tremendous amount of that water can be dumped back into the stream and kept here to help this ecosystem in itself, help the fish and the shrimp that can come in here, native species. And we would have a direct flow to the ocean where there always would be water at the mouth of that ocean. Again, that's part of the comprehensive planning or integrated resource management plan. We could add more water, not less water, into this stream. And that's important for cultural considerations, environmental considerations. The Oluwalu Cultural Reserve needs an abundant supply of water to come in and take out the non-native and reestablish native plants. Part of their vision, they need this water.
So an Oluwalu Town project would restore the stream.
Correct. Right now you can see there's a beautiful flow of water. We would want to increase that flow, not decrease the flow. And you do so by integrated resource management.
You consider yourself an environmentalist in that case.
Oh,
yeah.
My roommates were guys who were handcuffing themselves to the redwood trees to protect trees. It was radical. I came back to Maui and thought, I'm going to get into land use planning and I'm going to stop growth. I'm going to pretty much bring growth to an end.
I see.
And I'm going to save Big Beach.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, which is how Maui Tomorrow started. I was right there in the thick of it with Rick Sands and a lot of good people, Dr. Sands, I should say, who were out there. My older brother Rory introduced me to that and said, follow this stuff, you know. And slowly I realized, one, I can't stop growth. But two, what I could do was get involved.
If it is so important to be concerned about the environment and the beauty of Maui, then why build at all? I mean, why is it important to build? Why is it important to develop?
I think We have three choices moving forward. We can completely shut down, say no more growth, blow up the harbors, the airports,